moves forward from this? Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, happy Friday. It's 8 o'clock and I am Dawn Neeson. Coming up on the show this evening, Prince Harry faces yet more backlash with his claims over having no support after returning from Afghanistan, that the media ignored service personnel. Got really special issue with this one in particular. Meanwhile, a Grant Shapps has his 5th job in a year. That's not a good thing, is it? And he's now Secretary of Defence. I feel so much safer already, don't you? This is his 5th appointment in a year. Is he so good he gets moved to another post, or just so bad that Sunak can't quite decide what to put him? Oh, that's a bit mean, is it? Then the new school term is about to kick off. Or is it, without some of the students, as some of them are, well, aerobar concrete. I mean, concrete that's collapsing on our kids. Marvellous. There are calls for a full list to be published of which schools are affected. We don't even know that. And as of yet, it hasn't been released. What are they doing? And yes, we are sick of them, but the strikes are on the agenda as trains are cancelled today and junior doctors banned with consultants to go on strike. That is scary. I'm debating this and more with my panel. That's all coming up after the latest news headlines with Lisa Hartle.
I'm Lisa Hartle in the GB Newsroom. More schools may be forced to close due to a particular kind of concrete that's prone to sudden collapse. Abbey Lane Primary in Sheffield is one of over 150 in England at risk. Others in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are also being assessed. A TikTok influencer and her mother have been jailed for life for murdering 2 men. Mahik and Ansareen Bukhari ambushed the pair and killed them during a high-speed car chase near Leicester in February last year. Sadiq Hussain, who was travelling with Mohammed Hashim Ijazuddin, had threatened to reveal an affair he'd had with the social media star's mother. The women will serve a minimum term of more than 31 years and 26 years, respectively. Janine McKinney, Chief Crown Prosecutor, spoke after the trial.
Throughout the investigation and trial, we have seen continued lies and deceit from the defendants as they tried to evade responsibility for the killings. They showed complete disdain for the lives of their victims, and they showed little remorse for their actions. The families of the two young men who so tragically lost their lives at the hands of these defendants have patiently endured a lengthy and complex legal process as we brought these defendants to justice.
The number of migrants per boat crossing the Channel has hit a new monthly high. More than 5,000 people made the journey in August in 102 boats. That's an average of 53 people per vessel. The overall number of crossings is around 20% less than this time last year. Another wave of rail strikes has hit services across the country. Members of the ASLEF union are staging a 24-hour walkout, leaving many trains without drivers. The rail delivery group describes the action as unnecessary, but the union says the government is refusing to make a reasonable pay offer. And passengers will face continued disruption tomorrow as the RMT union will walk out over pay and conditions. The disputes, which started over a year ago, remains at a deadlock. The UK's economy performed better during the pandemic than previously thought, and it bounced back to pre-COVID levels almost 2 years ago. That's according to new figures released today by the Office for National Statistics. By the end of 2021, the economy is believed to have been 0.6% larger than it was in 2019. Estimates previously suggested that it had shrunk. The figures paint a more optimistic picture of the economy despite prices rising at the fastest rate for 40 years. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Dawn.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm Dawn Neeson, and you are watching and listening to GB News on a Friday night. Now, before we kick off, no pun included, because I know my football team, West Ham, are playing at this moment. I'm here talking to you because I love you so much. Anyways, before we kick off with the main meat, or replacement meat product if you prefer, the show here is a little taste of what's coming up. Benjamin and Charlie Landmin are going to join me to discuss crumbling schools, it's Concrete Gate, yes, train strikes, doctor strikes and ticket offices. Amongst all of that, I want to hear from you at home, though. So, tonight I'm asking you, is Harry, yes, that one, too toxic for the Invictus Games? Now, I'm curious to what you read. It's an important story for me. I'll tell you why in a minute. But get in touch with me at gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, in his new Netflix documentary, the Duke of Sussex has revealed his anger at the media for not covering injured soldiers returning from Afghanistan, and claims that he had no support from his family when he returned. The documentary is about the Invictus Games, which are an adaptive sports competition launched by the Duke in 2014 for injured service personnel and veterans. Now, joining me to discuss this is Trevor Colt, veteran who works with PTSD Resolution, a charity that helps to support armed forces veterans with their mental health. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Trevor. First, I just want to explain why this story is important to me. I'm a journalist. As a tabloid journalist, I worked in theatres of war. I know you have much more experience than me, but I actually was covering what happened in Bosnia. And for Prince Harry to say that the papers, the tabloids in particular, don't care about army personnel, I found particularly upsetting, and especially when you take into the fact that 79 journalists were killed covering events in Afghanistan since 1992. Anyway, that's why I'm angry about this. This isn't an I hate Harry, I hate Meghan thing. Put that aside, right? I'm just genuinely angry about what he has said in this documentary. So, Trevor, now you actually know what you're talking about, unlike me mostly. So, I'm assuming you have watched some of Harry's Netflix documentary on the Invictus Games.
Well, first of all, Dawn, thanks for having me on your show. Yes, I haven't actually watched on Netflix. I unsubscribed to Netflix quite some time ago when they brought out that nonsense At Home with the Harkles type thing. But I agree with you about the media. That is nonsense. I personally have worked with dozens of journalists over the last 5 or 6 years who have worked tirelessly to get stories out about Afghanistan, about what was happening in Afghanistan. If it wasn't for the media, Help for Heroes wouldn't have launched. Lots of charities wouldn't have raised hundreds of millions of pounds. The Sun's campaigns raised millions of pounds to help build a swimming pool at Headley Court. So it is nonsense what he's saying, and I'm baffled about some of the things that comes out of Harry's mouth. I think he's unstable, and maybe it's time that we have him sectioned.
Right, Trevor, so you actually do work very closely. I mean, you joined 20 years serving in various theatres across the globe. You were awarded the Military Cross in 2016. So you actually do know what you're talking about, and you are a veteran campaign. You've raised over £250,000 for veterans' causes. Now, so as someone, a very experienced Army veteran, what do you think the effect of Harry's comments have on fellow vets like yourself? And to be honest with you, the Invictus Games, does it reflect badly on the Invictus Games?
The answer is yes to that, Dawn. First of all, myself and the majority of the veterans community have really stopped listening to what comes out of Harry's mouth. He doesn't reflect that of, for instance, the Army's values and standards, integrity, discipline, loyalty. He doesn't reflect any of that. He has to remember that when you join the military, you do sign the oath of allegiance. And one of the things you should never do is attack Her Majesty the Queen or the members of the royal family, which he's done relentlessly. I honestly think the Invictus Games are stained. They're quite stained because the athletes there are all the wounded servicemen and women. I mean, they train all year round to try and showcase their talents. It's all they've got. And for someone to stand in front of them and talk about he never had a support structure as a multi-millionaire with Headley Court, with the Priory, he has connections to every let's be honest, his family has connections to every politician, every professor, every psychologist. I mean, the heads of charities, he's got them all at his fingertips, and he stands there and preaches in front of guys and women who are double and triple amputees who struggle to pay their bills. He is not a representative of the veterans community, and it's about time we stopped highlighting and pretending that he is.
And obviously, look, I'm not trying to take away from Harry what he has done setting up the Invictus Games. It is an amazing thing, and I have watched some of that documentary, and the stories there are incredibly moving. And that's what I wanted to watch. I wanted to hear how these people have come to the most amazing injuries, serving us, keeping us safe, basically, and suffered the most horrendous injury, and have overcome this, and are so brave in what they're doing with sort of like, you know, with their training and getting a new lease of life in them. So amazingly brave. And then for Harry to come along and target, and this isn't an anti-personal rant. I just think it's so unfair on veterans who I was very lucky and honoured to work with in Bosnia. And some of what those young lads, younger than me at the time, saw out there was horrific. You must have seen some very horrific things as well. And obviously, you, as you say, you work with PTSD victims as well. Now, Harry has spoken about not receiving help from this, which people have disproved, obviously. And I think, as Lord General Dannett said, recollections may vary. But do you think there is a hint, Trevor, that Harry might still be suffering from some form of PTSD, in that his recollections are varying and some of the things he says are offensive to the likes of yourself?
Well, Dawn, it's quite clear that he's suffering from something. If anything, he's a hostage in a relationship, and it's coming across that way. Now, a lot of the veterans that I speak to on a daily basis have just brushed him aside as if he doesn't matter anymore. Which is very sad, Dawn, because there was a time when Harry could have been like the Tussar of the veterans community. He could have achieved a lot.
Exactly.
And let's not pretend that, Harry invented the Invictus Games. He actually stole the idea from the Warrior Games in the US and brought it to the UK.
Yeah, true.
And let's not think for 1 minute that Harry put this together. He's not intelligent enough to put this together. There was a team of experts, men and women, that did this for him. So he hasn't really added much value apart from the HRH title. And the one thing that I will point out is I find it embarrassing that an individual keeps monetizing veterans, because he ran away from the UK a few years ago, and he hasn't actually give any money or helped a military charity out in the UK. But when it comes to a chance that he might lose his Netflix contract, he jumps straight on the veterans bandwagon and monetizes his show for his own financial gain. So I don't hold him in high regard, Dawn. I'm really sorry, but I don't.
Which is such a shame, because, you know, I mean, there are so many people achieving amazing things due to the Invictus Games, as you've already said. Trevor, as a veteran, the other question I want to ask you tonight is Grant Shapps, who's the new Defence Secretary. What do you make of that? A
massive surprise, if I'm honest. we are in a time, Dawn, where I think we all know, we are in the middle of a proxy war with Russia. Our military might is at an all-time low. We should be showing leadership, strong leadership and determination in the face of our enemies. And we're showing at the minute that we've got a guy in charge of our military who hasn't even been in the Boys Brigade and the Scouts, never mind the military. So it's a little bit shocking. And the reason why I find it shocking is this. We currently have several members of Parliament that are great candidates to be a defence minister. We have several that have served in the military that could have done a fantastic job. But at the minute, it seems to me that Rishi Sunak is why is he playing down a very, very important role at the minute? You know, we should have our best in there, not someone that's a novice.
As you say, Trevor, it's such an important time as well. I mean, we have literally got a war in Europe on our doorsteps. And Ben Wallace, I mean, what was your opinion of Ben Wallace? Do you think Ben was doing a good job?
Ben was doing a decent job. Don't get me wrong. With most jobs, I've spoke to Johnny Mercer about this, but in most jobs, Johnny Mercer would have been a fantastic candidate for that role. I'll say that. But we have a lot of pen pushers in Whitehall, civil servants, which are controlling a lot of high positions in our government, and it's not looking good when people are coming from university, getting roles and then controlling important roles. I honestly believe that the Ministry of Defence should go back to the War Office, where we have retired generals, brigadiers, colonels making those decisions, and we stop these civilians getting these roles, which they clearly are unfit to do.
You mentioned Johnny Mercer. Is there anyone else, you know, currently in the cabinet that you would have liked to have seen take the role rather than Grant Shapps?
Mark Francois be a good one. We did have Penny Mordaunt in there at one stage, and I will be honest, she did a decent job. But again, she got moved on. Today in Parliament, in government, we have great candidates for great roles. But then again, someone will say, well, Penny once brushed past me in the corridor and I felt offended. So we are now moving out people that are fantastic for the roles because of allegations. Johnny would have done a great job. Mark Francois, Penny Mordaunt, we've got Clive Lewis. We've got several MPs in there which I think could have been up to the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've moved us nicely on to the other subject I want to talk to you about, Trevor, which is obviously the Ukraine situation. You know, the war is ongoing on Ukraine. How worried do you think we should be in the West? I know this sounds terribly selfish, but people are concerned about what happens in this country. How much of a threat do you think what is happening in Ukraine, and certainly the involvement of Russia and potentially China, is to people in this country?
Dawn, do you know what? I don't think you wanted me to bring this up, but all these things, and in my opinion, we need to look at the Biden administration when you look at China, because, I mean, this all falls in a circle, and it's to do with, for instance, the Biden administration has stopped exporting goods to China. And in doing so, China's put a lot of pressure on Taiwan. Taiwan produces microchips, which are used in every type of computer system and things we use today, electronics. And the weird thing is in China, China are under extreme pressure because they've got an aging population, which is forcing mass unemployment. There's not enough people to fill the jobs. China's about to implode. Their GDP at the minute is over 350%, which no one's talking about. 350%. No economy in history has ever been able to sustain that without collapsing. So China is a worry, in my opinion, and maybe that's why China's putting pressure on Taiwan, because they're getting nothing from America. They need the microchips produced in Taiwan. So there's conflict potentially out there as well, Don. So, you know, if you look at the bigger picture, I'm going to be honest, America are our cousins. You know, we fight with them. We do lots of things. We trade with them. Well, we used to trade a lot more with them until Biden took over. So the problem in the West at the minute all stems not to the American people, but in my opinion, it all stems to the Biden administration that's causing issues not only in Ukraine, in China, in Korea, in Taiwan. So I think until there's a new president, we're not going to see much improve in the West.
Trevor, you're not really helping me on a Friday night, but I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. But before you go, Trevor, how do people, if there's anyone watching this or listening to you on the radio tonight who wants to get in touch and feels like, you know, they are a veteran and they are suffering, What advice would you give them? Where can they go to get the help and the support they need?
Dawn, if anyone out there is suffering and they've served in the armed forces, I would suggest they get on the phone and phone PTSD Resolution. PTSD Resolution are fantastic. They brought me back from being homeless. They brought me back from being broken. They brought me back from potential suicide. And now I'm able to reach out and do a little bit. I wish I could do more, but I don't. But that's who to get in touch with, PTSD Resolution or SAFA. They do great work.
Brilliant. And we can find them online, can we, if we do a search online for them?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Trevor, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your insight on all that. That's Trevor Cole, basically a military cross winner there, discussing everything that you need to know about the Invictus Games and, well, basically everything else. Right, you're watching and listening to GB News. Still to come, the scandal of schools falling apart and still no end in sight for these damn strikes. Don't miss it.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Showers clearing overnight, some low cloud remaining, even some fog by dawn, but the trend is for it to turn increasingly sunny and increasingly warm over the next few days as high pressure replaces low pressure. Low pressure already filling and disappearing overnight, and as a result, the showers and any outbreaks of rain tending to become very isolated through the hours of darkness. A lot of low cloud, I think, especially for England and Wales, and some fog patches forming by dawn. But the clearest skies will be across northern Scotland. Here, temperatures dipping close to freezing in some of the most sheltered spots, single figures widely. Further south, it's a mild night, and again, there'll be some low cloud and mist as we start things off. But that will, through the morning, lift and it will break up. Eventually, we'll see some sunny spells break through. I think still some cloud remaining, still some showers across England and Wales, but not as many as recent days. There'll be plenty of fine weather on offer and it will feel warmer. 26 Celsius there, the high in the southeast, low 20s widely elsewhere. And into Sunday, again, a bit of a slow start, some mist and fog first thing, especially for southern parts of the UK. Breezier further north with some outbreaks of rain for the north and northwest of Scotland. That tends to ease later in the day as sunshine develops widely across the country in time for the start of next week. And as that happens, temperatures rise.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Happy Friday. You are watching and listening to GB News with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, joining me now is Charlie Lamdin, and housing markets tech founder, podcaster and commentator, and possibly a concrete expert, we hope, and Benjamin Loughnane, research fellow at the Bow Group. Welcome, both of you, on a Friday night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Now, before we kick off with the criminal state of some schools are in, Charlie and I were wondering what your thoughts were on the house prices. Now, this is prompted by me having a conversation with my husband today, right? And he's going, I really want to sell the flat. And I'm going, we can't sell the flat because evidently house prices are through the floor and it's not worth selling anything at the moment. So I thought I'd get an expert in. And Charlie has driven all the way from Devon.
Yes.
In an electric car as well, I understand.
Yes.
So you're doing a bit for the environment. So just briefly, what, the car?
Yeah.
The environment.
It's very good.
Everyone loves the environment, and we have to love the environment. Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about what's happening to the housing market and house prices.
Right. Well, it's no surprise that everyone is confused because in the same week, Zoopla comes out and says year-on-year house prices are up 0.1%, and today Nationwide comes out and says no, they're not. They're down 5.3%.
This was my issue.
Yes, it's very confusing. House prices are. First and foremost, if you only know one thing about house prices, is that by the time anything hits the news, it's at least several months old. Land registry prices are 6 to 9 months since the sale was agreed. So when they reported June's figures in August, people just goes, August, land registry says this, and think that's what it is now. But it wasn't. That was for December, January.
Right.
Since when the world has changed.
Yeah.
I have unique access to data in the property market. I've had estate agents as my clients for 20 years, so I have truly a unique insight to what's happening. And a year ago, I said house prices are going to collapse, and everyone laughed at me. And people in the industry said to me, "Shh."
Yeah.
I said, no, because I don't want people to buy houses and get to negative equity. By all means buy, but just don't overpay. Be aware prices are coming down. And today, it really seems to be sinking in now that they are actually on the way. And so house prices don't ever actually crash like stocks do. Yeah. They slide over 2 or 3 years. We're 1 year into this slide. The second year will be steeper. The next 12 months will be the steepest falls.
Right.
And then it'll be, so we're 1 year into 3 years. So at the end of 2025, they're going to bottom out. That is my view. So now, having said that, that's not all properties everywhere. There's a big regional divide. House prices in the south have come down further and faster than those in the north.
Because the prices are most inflated, I'm assuming. Is that the reason why?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's been a bit of an exodus from the south to the north, people selling up in the south and using their money to buy cheaper stuff in the north, because levelling out hasn't worked yet.
No, this is true.
And also, but in the same borough, I mean, if you look at London boroughs, half of them have been going up, half of them have come down in the last year.
Yeah.
And within a single borough, houses can be going up while flats can be going down, or vice versa. So you cannot apply national averages to your particular situation. So for people, generally speaking, people who are worried about the market falling, if you need to sell, make sure you choose your agent like your life depends on it, and don't overprice it.
OK, but is it worth waiting a couple of years and it might get better again?
No.
Thank you for that, Charlie. You can come again. Right, yeah, you're not really helping there. So should we talk about concrete? OK. It's been revealed 156 schools in England have reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete in their structure. It looks a bit like aero, but not brown, which was used between the 1950s and 1990s. Now, the 156 are just the tip of this iceberg, evidently. We don't know how many it impacts yet because the government hasn't told us. The concrete itself is at risk of collapsing, and since 2018, the Department for Education has been looking into schools that may have it. So why now? Just before the kids go back to school, are we telling them they can't go back to school? Well, a beam in a school collapsed over the summer. Now, I have listened to various people from the government try to explain this situation. Schools Minister, in particular, Nick Gibb, been on every TV and radio station, and I still have no idea what the reason is. It's like a word soup, basically, of what was going on. Now, Benjamin, you actually know what you're talking about with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. You're looking at me. So did you understand what Nick Gibb was talking about and why we've been aware of this situation? We've been using this concrete since the 50s. We've been aware of it since the mid-90s being a problem because it's got a 30-year lifespan. Why 2 days before the kids go back to school are we suddenly saying, oh, there's a problem, you can't go back to school?
Yeah, well, it's terrible timing. I think the biggest problem here is the fact that it's going to impact kids' education. That's the main issue.
Again, on top of everything else.
But we also do have, I think, in the past sort of 60, 70 years in this country, a terrible ethic around building anything. We build things which have a lifespan of about 30 years. In previous generations, we built things to last for long after we were dead and long after our children and grandchildren were dead. So, like the Victorians, for example, built some of the greatest house buildings, some of the greatest schools, public buildings, libraries, etc. They're still standing, and they'll be standing after all of these schools end up collapsing or being knocked down and replaced. And even, like, the PFI schools built under Blair are, like, outdated now.
Yes.
And we're, like, 15, 20 years on from then. So I think we really need to get back to long-term thinking. There's the old saying that, you know, the idea of conservatism is planting a tree that you'll never sit under the shade of. And I think the idea of building for future generations, not just building for the next 20 years, is something we need to get back to grips with.
But why now? Why? I mean, we've known about this problem for, since the mid-90s, basically. So it's not even like you can blame the Tory government, because obviously under the Labour government, people were aware this concrete was going to start falling apart at one point.
Yeah. Well,
so why just 2 days before they go back to school?
Well, it's successive governments over years. I presume it's just got to a point where it's very easy to kick the can down the road, but now it's got to a point where actually it's, like, very dangerous. And, yeah, this should have been dealt with a long time ago, but no one wanted to grasp
Charlie, what do you
thorns.
make of this?
I heard Nick Gibb talking on the radio today.
Did you understand any of it?
And I was listening very carefully to that. What's the reason?
Yeah.
Why? Oh, evidence. What evidence?
Exactly.
You didn't say what the evidence was. And actually, there's plenty of evidence that this problem's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And to me, who knows why it's been done? It's either some kind of deliberate diversionary story. Here's a big crisis to make you look over here because we don't know what's coming over there. Or someone has gone, oh, no, this is a real problem and we've got no choice.
It's just, I just do find it astonishing. But, I mean, you know, I don't want anyone listening or watching tonight to panic, by the way. It's not affecting every school, and many kids will be able to go back to school, and there are contingency plans many schools are putting into place to make it safe. So don't worry. I mean, the schools aren't going to collapse on your kids' heads. But it would be nice to even know... We don't even know the full list.
Yeah.
How many, you know...
Well, that's the thing. We know certain ones, but there's others we don't necessarily know if it's there. It's a bit like asbestos, you know, how many buildings we don't even know it's necessarily in the building. So this is it's sort of a ticking time bomb, and it's like the worst possible place. I can't think of any worse places than hospitals and schools to be in danger of crumbling, like, around people.
It's a lot of government buildings this place is in, isn't there? I mean...
Well, they do it on the cheap, that's why. I think a lot of the time they do things on the cheap, short-term solutions.
Yeah, it was... the reason it was used in building materials, they started in the 50s, was because it was very light and it was cheap. And, you know, as Benjamin has pointed out, Charlie, they don't build things to last anymore, do they? Housing stock, I mean, you're the expert in housing. I mean, the place I live in is like 250 years old. Nothing's fallen off it yet, right. Touch wood. So this concrete is like, it was a cheap building material that...
Yeah, and it's been used, it's even been used in some domestic, so it's been used by public sector and private sector. And yeah, it's cheap, and everyone was told it was safe and going to last a long time, and guess what?
Yeah.
I think the root cause of this problem is the fact that political terms are so short, and therefore...
Exactly, I completely agree.
I think that this is an argument, perhaps, that in the same way that the Bank of England has been given independence from politics, perhaps education should as well. Because I hate the fact that education is politicised and becomes a budget thing. It just shouldn't be, because, you know, what's more important to invest in than not only our kids' education, but their safety and their health as well?
Yeah,
and we haven't. We've just eroded that.
I think that's a very good point, and you know, this isn't even a political point from me, because I try to be straight down the middle. But I mean, the way the Labour Party are jumping all over it and going, yeah, Tories, and it's like, well, hold on, you had an opportunity to do this as well.
They're both guilty of it, because it's successive governments over generations. When Labour were in power, they were doing the same thing, and the Tories have done the same thing. I think, look, King Charles has a great history of things like Poundbury, building, going back to traditional methods. If we have a royal commission into public buildings and say we need to build things to last, not just so that a 5-year government puts stuff up and people feel like things are being built and changing, if we actually have something led from the top, maybe we can solve this problem.
So do you think that both sides, in a way, are, as you said, Charlie, it's a bit like, you know, this might be a distraction from something else that is coming down the line. But do you think, both of you, that both our main political parties are basically playing politics with our kids' education?
Absolutely. And the one thing probably most people can agree on is we'd like our kids to be well educated.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think it should be a party political thing.
No.
And I think I've never heard it talked about, but, you know, I wish it wasn't, because the one thing all parents agree on, whatever their politics are, is we'd like our kids to get well educated and be happy and safe.
Yeah, and I think it's I think it's appalling that the fact that, you know, we put our kids through what we put them through during the pandemic, locking them down in that way, especially vulnerable kids who didn't have, you know, wealthy families in nice houses with free Wi-Fi, etc. Some of them, thousands of them, are still missing from the school system.
Yeah, it's outrageous, and I think, you know, kids bear the brunt a lot of the time. With lockdown, certainly the younger generations suffered a lot more. You know, because they lost their education, they lost key opportunities. Kids going out of university into the workplace didn't get the experience and the nurture that they needed at the early stages of the career. And this just feels like a continuation of that theme, where the young are being made to suffer. And, you know, they're just left behind.
Again, a political football, as they were during lockdown. And, you know, even the exam marking system, even the exam market system, where sort of like, you know, we were the only country in the entire world that had teachers marking exams rather than exam board. And now we've got that discrepancy where some kids have got high grades, some have got low grades, and there's no even levelling between England, Wales and Scotland at the moment.
No.
It's absolutely terrifying. I mean, it's really... You just wish that kids would be put where they should be, and that's first.
Yeah, and the one thing I haven't heard mentioned today, which I think is equally bad, is that the number of parents who this week who are saying, what am I going to do? I've got to go to work.
Well, exactly that.
Yeah. You know, and there are people there are people who are going to lose income because of this. Now, the government today said that they're going to be paying for extra travel costs or even accommodation costs. I don't think apparently they said that today, but I don't think that they are going to be compensating parents who may lose income because now their kids can't go to school.
Exactly.
It's really bad.
Yeah, especially as they said, you know, the more working class parents who, if they don't go to work, they don't get paid. And such short notice. In any case, I hope we're not depressing you too much. Right, you are watching and listening to GB News. Coming up, more strikes afoot. Junior doctors and consultants are band together for their next round of strikes in October.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News. Now, I asked you earlier if the Duke of Sussex is too toxic for the Invictus Games. You've heard my opinion. You heard the marvellous veteran on talking about how he felt earlier on. And you have been getting in touch because this programme is all about what you think, OK? So it's important. Mike says, no, Harry was spot on. Right, OK. Another GB viewer on Twitter says, yes, he is so selfish that it's always about him and not about our brave veterans. Meanwhile, Margaret, good evening, Margaret. You think, yeah, he may not be doing things in the right way, and in doing so, he's being attacked. He may be rich, but money does not buy you happiness. He does have mental health issues, and we should be offering support to him. Margaret, I do agree with you to a certain extent, but I mean, the fact that he's denied getting any help and being offered any help when he also spoke a few years ago about how supportive his brother was, advising him to get mental help. It's... any case. But interesting to hear your thoughts, so please do keep them coming in. Right, now, still in the studio is Charlie Amdin, housing market tech founder, podcaster and commentator, and Benjamin Loughnane, research fellow at the Bow Group. And we are now talking, I'm afraid, sorry, we have to, a British Medical Association has announced junior doctors and consultants in England, so Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland don't need to panic yet. We'll take joint strike action for the first time over 4 days across September and October. The October one to coincide with the Tory conference. Not about politics, though. No, definitely not. That's in addition to the train drivers' union as left strikes this weekend. Right, so now, what do we... Who wants to go first on strikes? I feel like I've been talking about strikes for a year, probably because we have. Benjamin, what do you make of these? What's worrying me now is the fact that the junior doctors are timing their strike with the consultants. So basically, they say that you are going to get a Christmas-level service for those 4 days in October. What do you make of this?
Look, I'm very sympathetic to people who want pay rises because, realistically speaking, over the past few years, with the rate of inflation and the cost of living, they've taken a real terms pay cut. So it's completely justifiable for them to say, hang on a minute, we need a pay rise. That being said, I think it's immoral when you're in healthcare to go out and strike, because if people are dying as a result of the strike action, even if one person is neglected, they miss a cancer screening or they die, whatever else, I think, you know, frankly, this is a vocation. It's something that you do because you are there to help people. The money is a secondary factor. Obviously, people need to live, but I don't think strike is the way to do it. I think there should be a better solution to this.
OK, Charlie, we have so far, before these strikes even, 940,000 appointments and treatments have had to be postponed because of the previous strike action. Hospital waiting lists are now topping 7.5 million, with 1 in 7 of us on a hospital waiting list. And if that is you, thoughts with you. I've got people in my family who are suffering like this as well. And the thought of another strike, delaying things even further, is just horrible. What do you make of this joint action?
To me, it smacks of desperation. I mean, I partly agree with Ben, but I also, you know, he says there must be a better solution. I don't I don't think there is one, otherwise they would probably do it. This is the last resort. Through the course of my work, I actually I provide one-to-one advice on moving house to people. And recently I had a session with a young doctor, and he was strung like piano wire. He was so stressed and so exhausted. And you know, if these are the people we're entrusting with our healthcare, you know, they have had a substantial real terms pay cut. They work hours that would be considered illegal in a business, pretty much, the kind of hours they work. And the trouble with just treating it as a vocation and not complaining about it, which they've been doing for a long time and nurses have too, is that they don't get, you know, they get the government gets away with not paying them what they're worth. So, you know, you've got new doctors coming into the NHS now who are suffering the effects of the austerity, which that's a whole other topic, I know, but you can't do a good job under those circumstances. You know, if you have emergency needs and you go to hospital, you don't want the doctor that's checking you out to be A, skint, and B, sleep deprived and worn out. You want them to be able, like they always used to be. Doctors were well-paid people who were, you know, but they seem to just be becoming absolutely wrung out like that. So deciding to strike together like that, to me, is them stepping it up a notch. They do put in place, you know, for critical emergencies, they say they will always make sure that those are met. I don't know what the results are, and it would be very hard to prove either way. But the fact of this, right, there are British doctors going and being doctors abroad.
This is true,
because
absolutely.
this is better. And then we have a shortage of doctors. So it's a false economy, in any case, not paying them.
But so the BMA, not for the consultants, but for the junior doctors, are demanding 35%. I mean, do you think that's a fair pay demand?
That's that's what they've lost in real terms. So all they're asking for is, can we just have what we used to get? That's what we're asking for. We're not looking for any more than that. You know, everybody effectively is having a real terms pay cut at the moment, but they've been having it more for longer than a lot of people.
Do you think that's true, Benjamin? They have been having a pay cut for longer than a lot of people who are listening and watching tonight?
Absolutely, but there's so much waste within the NHS. The way to solve this is to go through, gut the middle management who are, you know, a waste of money, get rid of the diversity managers, stop the huge amount of waste on things like defunct PPE and all that sort of nonsense. And if the Conservative government try to touch the NHS and try to reform it, all of these same people will come out and say, no, don't touch the NHS, you've got to leave it alone. So it's a sacred cow to them. The things that need to be done in order to ensure they get paid fairly and have better conditions and better working conditions and a higher quality of healthcare for people who use the service, they aren't allowed to do because people will go out and complain, oh no, the Tories are trying to destroy the NHS.
You're trying to privatise the NHS by the back door.
Even if it's a completely innocuous attempt to make it more efficient, it was seen as an attack on the NHS.
Yeah. So, I mean, Charlie, do you think that's a problem, the fact that as soon as you start going down this road, that it does need reorganisation, the system is broken, and everyone screams privatisation, privatisation. Do you think that is an issue? I mean, the NHS is the 5th largest employer in the entire world.
Which is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you've got an institution of that size that's also that old, change is incredibly difficult, OK? Because the cogs have to keep turning day and night, 24 hours a day. I don't see... I completely agree with that it's bloated in terms of its overheads. And
still use fax machines.
Non-medical managers, that kind of stuff. And the management responsible for that, not the doctors.
No, I'm not saying, but you know, that's where the level of organisation is going wrong.
Yeah, it is, and you know, there is the sacred cow is the bloated... it's very, very difficult because there are people there who want to protect their jobs. I get that. And so the people, they're going to fight against it. And there's never been an institution of that size that was successfully reformed that I know of. It's going to come to some sort of collapse or some sort of takeover before there's wholesale change. And unfortunately, I don't see either of things happening. Privatisation doesn't have a brilliant track record here, sadly. No. You know, look at the water companies now. What ends up happening is... They just suck it all dry.
Asset stripping. People will go, and if you privatise, they'll just, you know, sell everything of value.
There's something very dangerous about when you've got an organisation that's saving lives, making money from it.
Absolutely. But I think it's all in procurement. It's things like, you know, people overpaying for things which you can get a lot cheaper.
Absolutely.
And there's no incentive to do it cheaper because there's no profit.
So the system has been set up badly. Unfortunately, we do have to move on. But if you are out there watching and listening tonight and you are suffering from this, I mean, you know, just As I said, someone in my family is going through the same thing, so I just wish you all the best luck in the world with getting through the next few months. Now we move on. Next, we've got to have some fun. Come on, concrete and stripes. Next, a funflation quiz. You can play at home. Don't miss it. All that coming very soon.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to GB News with me, Dawn Neeson. Still in the studio is Charlie Lambdin, housing market tech founder, podcaster and commentator. That's a long title. And Benjamin Loughnane, research fellow at the Bow Group. Marvellous. That's shorter. Shorter, thank you. Right, now, very quickly, I'd like to do a little quiz because I'm really good at these sort of things. We have some items here in your virtual supermarket basket, and I want you to tell me how much they cost now, years ago, and how much they cost 15 years ago. It's a funflation quiz. I didn't write this, by the way, and she's sacked when I get out of here, but hey. One at a time, please. This isn't a race, right? Okay, and just look at me. Don't look at any screens because you might cheat. Right. The price of sugar today is, you can play at home because it's really exciting. The price of sugar today is £1.11. What do you think the price of a pack of sugar was 15 years ago?
50p.
I was going to say 50p, but shall I go different?
OK, this is an average price.
I'll say 60p.
Right, 50 and 60p. Right, OK, and the answer is 85p. Oh, that's quite pricey then, really.
Yeah.
Right, OK. Right, now, this is... Yeah, see, there. Right, the price of a pint today... Oh, I know this one. Is... The price of a pint today is £4.21.
Where's that pub?
Average. Where's this pub we're going?
Yeah.
Average price, evidently, just been screamed in my ear.
So you're across the road at £7.
£7? Blimey, we're not going there. No. Right, the price of a pint today is £4.20. Average price, average. So what do you think the price of average price of a pint was 15 years ago?
£2.50, £2.
How much?
£2 to £2.50.
OK.
Yeah, well,
Charlie, come on.
£3.
OK, and the answer is £2.30.
Oh.
Wow. You were closest there, then. Yeah, not bad. OK, we're doing all right here.
How old were you 15 years ago?
He was a fetus. OK, don't rub it in. Right, now, petrol prices, right. The price of petrol today is average, remember, 138.9p a litre. What do you think the price of petrol per litre was, average price, 15 years ago? Right, OK, Charlie?
£1.10p a litre.
Benjamin?
I'll say £1 a litre.
And the answer is, 103.9.
Yeah.
You're pretty good at this, you two. Right, OK, now, milk. Obviously, this is the one politicians always get wrong, isn't it? You ask them how much is a pint of milk in the supermarket, none of them have any idea. Right, the price of a pint of milk today is £1.05. So what do you think the price of a pint was 15 years ago? Right, Benjamin, you want to go first on this one?
70p.
OK.
36p.
Blimey, that's it. 40p? That was good.
Wow, that's really
That
gone
was
up,
very
isn't it?
impressive. We didn't specify what milk it was, obviously, and some milk is more expensive. Oh, you know the score. Right, OK. The price of a dozen eggs. This is an exciting shopping, this, isn't it? The price of a dozen eggs today is £3.26 average. What do you think the price of a dozen eggs was 15 years ago? Who wants to go first on this one?
£1.50.
I'll say £2.
£2.47.
Ooh, what, really?
Wow.
The fetus, and that I don't mean that as an insult, got that one. How old were you then?
12.
Huh.
I was
35.
sentient.
Yes, exactly. I can remember it very
I
well.
was living in London.
Oh, well, that ages you, believe me. Yeah, I'm only 25. I've lived in London all my life. Right, now, the price of a can of Coke. A can of Coke today is 95p. Is it really? Blimey. What do you think the price of a can was 15 years ago? Charlie, I'm coming to you first.
Oh, well, 30 years ago, I used to sell them at school for 50p, made 25p profit, but 15 years ago, 60p.
God, that's good entrepreneurial skills.
40p.
40p?
Yeah.
OK, and the answer is 45p. Blimey. Right, OK, I've got one more. I want to do the other one. Right, OK, fish and chips, right. The price back then was £2.43. How much have they quoted in this article for a bag of chips now? Fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
Yeah.
£12.
Fish and chips?
Yeah.
£7.
Blimey, £9. I didn't know that. Really expensive.
That is...
Right, OK. Oh, we have to go. Oh, my God, that was so much fun. I hope you played along. I haven't got them all right.
Probably.
That's it from me today. Thank you to my panel and to you at home. Up next is the wonderful Mark Verlin. But first, let's
are you doing
the weather, shall we?
Great. I can't wait. Nice.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Showers clearing overnight, some low cloud remaining, even some fog by dawn, but the trend is for it to turn increasingly sunny and increasingly warm over the next few days as high pressure replaces low pressure. Low pressure already filling and disappearing overnight, and as a result, the showers and any outbreaks of rain tending to become very isolated through the hours of darkness. A lot of low cloud, I think, especially for England and Wales, and some fog patches forming by dawn. But the clearest skies will be across northern Scotland. Here, temperatures dipping close to freezing in some of the most sheltered spots, single figures widely. Further south, it's a mild night, and again, there'll be some low cloud and mist as we start things off. But that will, through the morning, lift and it will break up. Eventually, we'll see some sunny spells break through. I think still some cloud remaining, still some showers across England and Wales, but not as many as recent days. There'll be plenty of fine weather on offer and it will feel warmer. 26 Celsius there, the high in the southeast, low 20s widely elsewhere. And into Sunday, again, a bit of a slow start, some mist and fog first thing, especially for southern parts of the UK. Breezier further north with some outbreaks of rain for the north and northwest of Scotland. That tends to ease later in the day as sunshine develops widely across the country in time for the start of next week. And as that happens, temperatures rise.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Like a stubborn case of chlamydia, I'm back. On television, on radio and online, in the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, ULEZ, net zero policies, COVID tyranny and sky-high